City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded July 11, 2023.
All right, it's 2 o'clock. I'll call to order the July 11th Police and Fire Commission meeting. First item on the agenda is roll call. Please call the roll.
Kirschling.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Mrozek.
Here.
Ostrowski.
Here.
Zenner.
Here.
All right, everybody is present and accounted for. Item number 2 is the President's report. I really don't have a lot for today. I'd like to thank everybody in emergency services for working over the 4th of July weekend, all that they did for Riverfront and the golf outing tournament, and everything went smooth as far as I was reported and all of that. Other than that, I don't have any other comments right now, but thank you all very much for all of your work and dedication. And next on the agenda is item 3, which is the approval of the minutes. You have the minutes in front of you. Take a second and go through them if you need to. They should have been in your packet. And waiting for a motion.
Kirschling, make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Kirschling. May I have a second?
Second by Mrozek.
Seconded by Mrozek. Any questions, comments, changes, edits, editorials? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The minutes have been approved. Item number 4 is the confirmation of bills. I would like to report that Mr. Ostrowski invited me in, and we went through the procedure. The rest of you will get your chance as the year goes on to figure out what the procedure is for reviewing those and all of that. And it was a good refresher. Thank you, Mr. Ostrowski.
Well, I did that out of self-indulgence. That way I'm not afraid to pass it off to somebody else. But thank you, Jerry. I appreciate you attending that with me, and I will work with each of the other commissioners so everybody gets a chance. Today's bills, the police and fire, I would like to take the ambulance service first. There is really nothing extraordinary out of the ordinary, and their budget is running well in line. Going to the fire department, very similar as far as the everyday bills. Nothing at all. Must have been a low day at the order table because it didn't really go that much. Their budget is running a little bit tight, but nothing that jumps out. The one thing on the police department, I would ask that Chief Bob Quisou explains the 5th item down, the wellness visits. That's the big expense on their sheet.
That is, when I became chief, one of my goals was to implement some type of wellness program here. And I'm not talking physical, I'm talking mental. After we had our officer-involved shooting this year, we stepped it up a notch because during that shooting, I had individuals that came to me to talk to me about what they remembered from our previous officer-involved shooting, which occurred 15 years ago. So myself and Assistant Chief Rotier and Assistant Chief Williams sat down and made this a priority. And so that is $15,300. That is for a 3-year contract with Hakes Wellness, where every single officer from myself down and records bureau personnel, since they have to read the reports, they have to view some of the horrible things that we have to view on a daily basis. They will be meeting with a professional, and it's something where it's a wellness check. It's not a fit for duty. They can talk about anything they want to at these meetings. They don't even have to talk if they don't want to. And so every single person here will actually meet once a year for an hour. And the individuals who do internet crimes against children and sensitive crimes, so like sexual assaults and child abuse, will actually meet twice a year with professionals to just kind of build a rapport. And if they ever do have issues that they're dealing with regarding this job, this profession, or even family, they have somebody that they can reach out to from this point on. But we just want to make sure everybody's healthy mentally here.
Chief, I want to tell you that I don't think I could support you on any item bigger than this, especially in the last 6-8 months of reading the police reports of what's happening in the community, in the area. I totally endorse it. With that, reviewing the rest of his budget and everything's in line, and I would recommend a motion to approve bills as submitted.
Kirschling, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the bills. Is there any other questions or comments on them?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up, and that is, I'd echo that, it is money very well spent. However, that's going to be a significant hit on our budget, and I'm assuming that's something we're basically assimilating into our budget as is. Is there any money that the city, either through personnel, that they have an EAP program? Is there any money that has been offered or that we've looked at?
We have not looked at that.
Set that?
As of this time, no. I'm going to be putting it into my operational budget. I will find the money for this. Again, it's priority. That's something that we can work with. We've got CIVMIC, City Villages Mutual Insurance Company, and whenever there's a critical incident, they do cover like 6 meetings with a psychologist. And we also have an EAP program. But one of the things with those programs is to make sure that the officers are physically and mentally capable of coming back to this profession. And this is not what this is about. This is about the wellness of them because of everything that they see. And sometimes this builds a lot of stress in the family and everything else that a lot of us probably don't know about. And they want to keep to themselves. And the other thing is when you're talking about law enforcement, sometimes as an officer, which you are well aware, they have a hard time building trust. When you contact EAP, you don't know who you're going to be getting. And so that was actually another concern as well. This is a program where we have the same people that are meeting with the same people, and you get to build a rapport and get to know them. Obviously, I think it's going to be extremely successful, but no, we have not been offered any money through the city. We haven't reached out to them either. This is something I'm going to put into my operational budget.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Zenner?
No, I just think that's something very important, and it would be something that the city would look at if we're looking at a 0% increase in budgets, that they open that up. Either that, I know Safety Committee offers grants every once in a while, but that's going to be bins compared to how much this is costing. So, okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? I would agree with Mr. Zenner wholeheartedly. I think this is a great program and money well spent. So I encourage the city to do everything they can to help with this. Motion to approve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 5, Lieutenant Ben. If you could step to the microphone, please give us a report on the update on the Senior Open Championship that was held at Century World.
Good afternoon. Yes, so the Senior Open that we just held overall was very successful, it sounds like. In talking with the USGA representatives, they're very happy with the community, the course, and public safety effort as well. Some of the comments throughout the process, and working with their security rep for the USGA, he works with lots of communities in their public safety, and sometimes he sees public safety that are siloed or don't necessarily work as well with each other, and he said that is definitely not the case here. Very impressed with the way the public safety entities are able to work together cooperatively, and I would say I would appreciate that as well as trying to put something like this together as a process. Just like to reach out and thank Wisconsin Emergency Management, Wisconsin DNR, Portage County Sheriff, State Patrol, Marathon County Sheriff's Department EOD, the FBI, State Patrol K-9, UW-Madison PD, K-9, Brown County Sheriff's Department, K-9, Outagamie County Sheriff's K-9, and the 54 Civil Support. They're all public safety partners helping us out to make the event secure and safe. It sounds like, talking with the USGA and Century, they hope to have another event of this scale or a little bit smaller coming in the future. So hopefully this will be one of many to come. Overall, we did have a really positive event. Some minor issues as far as traffic. I think on Friday we had a bit of a backup on Stanley Street and on Michigan Ave. That was one of the highest attended days, so it was for approximately about half an hour. And I think a lot of that had to do with maybe how the parking was being managed in Lot Q, and so we made contact with the third-party vendor, and they made some tweaks and didn't experience that the rest of the event. I think we had one arrest for a warrant of one of the vendor workers, some minor thefts, but overall not a lot of issues, which is not common. Apparently there are a number of people that in these events that get ejected for various reasons, and that was not the case in Stevens Point, so that's a positive thing. As far as the medical side of things, mostly the calls for service that we experienced in Aspirus, again, did the mainstay of the medical footprint on the course and responding, and it was supported by our law enforcement officers and also overseen by the fire department as well. Approximately 205 medical calls for service throughout the week, which was less than we were expecting based on what we had talked about with the previous year's event in 2022. And those ranged from anything from somebody getting hit with a golf ball, unfortunately, to heat exhaustion, to some more serious medical events. So, but again, ample staffing for that and resources, whether it's we had EMS on bicycles and carts and things like that. So coming up here July 17th, we're going to have an after action meeting with the main entities in public safety and the USGA, just to kind of go and review and say what worked well, and then what could we improve if we have an event similar in this nature in the future.
Lieutenant, I'd like to just personally thank your department, because living 2 houses south of the main parking, I was quite concerned, what it was going to be like. Didn't disrupt my life at all. I mean, it handled it. Even that day they said Stanley Street was backed up. There's days with college comes back, it's the same thing. So you guys handled it really, really well.
Do they have any preliminary numbers on how many people attended?
I don't have hard and fast numbers. I know it's our highest date that I did ask. I think that Friday was close to 8,000 of spectators, but then you would then factor in other entities like the workers, public safety, corporate guests, and hospitality that we don't necessarily have numbers on. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you very much. We were going to have an update from Assistant Chief Gemza, but I'm going to assume that he's on a fire call or something more important at the moment. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, and that would be the police chief's report.
Again, I just want to reiterate the things that Lieutenant Ben Einbrook said. It went off flawlessly. A lot of that has to do with, obviously, his the energy that he put into this for the last year and a half. And the entire department really came together and worked as a team to make this successful. But he was obviously the point of contact, and he's the one that put this all together, and that's why it was successful. I did end out a performance review that Assistant Chief Dana Williams did on him, just for you to read. It kind of encompasses everything that he's taken on over his first year here. He actually reached his probationary period June 20th. So he's been doing all of this while he's on probation, and I was going to hold him off on probation and extend him, but I figured I wouldn't since he's been doing such a good job. But again, I want to thank the PD and everybody else for their support. I don't really have a whole lot to go over. Obviously, one of the main things is on June 9th, Assistant Chief Dana Williams has been attending the Wisconsin Command College. She did graduate with a degree as Certified Public Manager from UW-Madison. So we did celebrate that with her as well. Some of you were able to attend the Rescue Task Force training that was put on by Lieutenant Johnson. It's in here. We had about 120 police officers from 5 different agencies. We had 100 plus firefighters, paramedics, first responders from 5 agencies. And we had well over 200 teachers and staff members. out of 3 school districts that actually participated in this rescue task force this year. It was a huge success. On June 15th, Officer Christy Arns, who actually used to be our CIT officer, our crisis intervention officer, her and NAMI, Linda Frolick and Amy Pond from Human Services and Jessica Hakey from Human Services, they were honored by the Wisconsin chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for becoming a certified CPI crisis intervention partner. And that's where the team actually works cooperatively to train non-sworn citizens and members and business leaders within the community. And as we all know, on the 29th, Officer Alan Rossick retired after 26 years of service with the Stevens Point PD. And we also had, on the 30th, Riverfront Rendezvous started as well. That actually went off without a hitch as well. And then one of the things I wanted to talk about real quickly is, you all know that we've been working about getting the flock cameras. Those are license plate reader cameras throughout the city. In May 17th, we ended up getting 7 out of the 10 implemented. And then in June, we had Detective Kent Lepak kind of train some of our shifts on the flock camera. And since then, it's been unbelievable. I just want to hit on a couple. In July, there was an NCIC flock hit telling us there was a car that entered the city from the north side. It came back to possibly having some missing juveniles in this car that was taken from Des Moines, Iowa. It was a 16-year-old runaway and a 9-year-old brother that he had with him. They were able to find that vehicle as it entered the city. And we had to wait for about 7 hours for mom and dad to travel up here to pick up their missing kids. But that was one of the successes. We also had a retail theft at Target. Again, we had a description of the vehicle, and we had a time frame, but we didn't have a plate. Officer Chi Yang put that into the flock cameras from Target, because we have a flock camera over there. Ended up locating the vehicle. Got the plate off of the vehicle, and Wausau Police Department, we entered that. Wausau Police Department actually stopped the vehicle shortly after that, and we got all the stolen items back and returned them to Target as well. And if you went to RTF training, we actually held off for a little while because there was a fire that occurred over on Riverview Avenue, and it ended up being an arson. We used the flock cameras to try to assist the DNR with identifying a possible suspect. The flock cameras actually located a vehicle, got a plate number, and there was an arrest made for arson because of the flock cameras as well. That's just 3 of them. Since the beginning of June, we've had dozens of successes like this. People with warrants, stolen vehicles, and everything. So they are doing an incredible job. And then one last thing. I know some of you know, I talked to some of you commissioners, Lead Officer Austin Lee, who was the canine handler for Fala. Fala had some medical issues. One of the things was dental. She had been losing all of her teeth and so on and so forth. And there were some other issues that came up. And so Lead Officer Lee actually placed his resignation in as a canine handler. He did put in over the 3-year minimum. He put in over 5 years with the canine. Follow is almost 8 years old. And so I decided and made the recommendation that we retire Fala. So we're in the process of getting another canine. Officer Jason Dinger has been selected as our next canine handler. And Assistant Chief Williams, Lieutenant Ben Eitenbrook, J.D. Ballou, Sergeant Ballou, who's our current canine handler with Barry, and Officer Dinger will actually be going down September 7th to pick out another canine from Von Lick, and then he'll start his training on September 11th. And so we'll have a new canine here. We are receiving a donation, which I'll come forward to you in August with to get your permission from a local business. And with this donation, they had requested that they get to name the dog, and as long as you guys are okay with it in August, we will allow that. So.
Interesting. Thank you for the report. Any questions or comments for the chief?
I'd just like to congratulate Assistant Chief Dana on her graduation. I hope it was pomp and circumstance, the whole ball of wax. But congratulations.
Hot dog and celebrate.
There's worse things.
It was a very nice day, yes.
Okay, any other? Chief, I've been getting comments and questions about the legality of these electric bikes that are out there. It's a new thing. They go much faster for a longer amount of time than the human-powered ones. The concern is, what is their status? Are they considered a motorized bicycle? Are they considered a regular bicycle? I'm not asking for answers right now, but if you could get the department to put something together and put it in the newspapers and around so the public knows, because they're creating a lot of confusion, and because they're new.
Yeah, and I can answer some of that. It is considered a bicycle. If they are used here in the city, within the city of Stevens Point city limits, they do have to be registered with the police department as a bicycle. Other than that, they have to obey all the rules as traffic, just like every other bicyclist. Red lights, they have to stop. Stop signs, they have to stop. And obviously, if they do, they're supposed to be utilized on the roadway, far right side of the roadway, going with traffic.
Okay, yeah, if you could put something together, that would be great.
Yep.
Someone, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? I'll make a motion to accept the report, place it on file.
Second that motion.
Second by Zenner. At this time, seems we don't have a representative here from the fire department. I'm going to ask the commission if you would like to move item number 10 forward, and we will postpone 7, 8, and 9 until someone arrives or until we decide what else to do with it.
That's fine with me.
Sounds good. Because I know Corey has limited time, so we won't sit around and wait. I don't want to just ignore these if we need to get them done. So agenda item number 10 is revisions to the policies and procedures for the Police and Fire Commission. We are on to section, I don't even, section, is that the one that's done? I think section 3. I'll turn it over to Logan at this point in time. City Attorney Beveridge. Corey, we may have you come up front too when we need you. Thank you. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
The copy that's provided today, is that the same copy that we got last time, or is there changes?
There are changes. So most of the preliminary stuff in there, i.e. up through what we discussed previously, should be the same.
Okay.
However, there are additional changes compared to what we looked at last time.
Okay.
By the way, I was just pulling up the statutes about electric bikes. They have not done us any favors in terms of simplicity.
No. That would be too easy.
All right, so Corey, obviously since your time is limited, I think probably the thing that makes the most sense is to jump directly to the financial stuff.
Section, vehicles. I'm sorry, what?
So this would be
Section
2.01.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're backtracking a little.
Yeah, so the last time that we looked at that, basically it was just, let's find out what the day-to-day real-life practice is right now.
Right.
Which we suspected was not in keeping with the exact text here, and it turns out that's the case. So the changes that you see reflected, and actually I said just a second ago that everything earlier on in this was the same. This actually changed, and the changes that you see in there are direct from Corey. So this is what he had provided to me. So Corey, I guess just take it away with regards to this particular aspect of the document.
Sure. So I reviewed the document. A couple of changes that I've suggested. First of all, in the first paragraph, where it talks about the police department administrative assistant will develop the commission's administrative budget. I believe that would be done by Candy Tork. And the actual title for that position is Records Bureau Supervisor. So I did suggest that as an update so that we have, your correct title. Then on the second paragraph, we're talking about after discussion, each department's final budget requests must be supported by affirmative motion of the commission for recommendation of the mayor and the council. And then we have the commission's recommended budget will be presented to the mayor. And it used to say mayor, CT, and common council by the chiefs. The actual flow of how that process works is it goes from the departments and the chiefs to the mayor and the comptroller treasurer. And then we include it in the overall budget and then go to the council with that. So just to kind of reflect that, typically it's not them presenting to all three at the same time, that typically it starts with the mayor and the CT was proposing to strike common council from that, so that it just reflects that accurately. For the third paragraph, where we have no internal offset of funds between accounts. I don't believe this really represents current practice because right now, basically, we just ask that the departments come within budget for their overall bottom line number for their operating budget. So, if they go over on one line item, as long as it's offset by coming under on other line items, that's fine, and that's, I think, fine with the council, I think, doesn't mind that, and the mayor and I don't mind that. So I'm just proposing to strike that entire third paragraph because I think it's just unnecessary, and I'm a fan of being concise. And then with
Corey, that would be the first
ahead.
section on page 8 is what you're talking about striking.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The paragraph that starts with no internal
All right.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yep. And then on the final paragraph where it says the chiefs will comply with the budget management requirements and procedures established by the CT, current guidance is to manage funds within the overall budget. And then I'm proposing to strike the kind of end of that sentence with and not transfer funds between line item accounts because, as I already mentioned, we do allow those offsets between line item accounts. And really, those were the only changes that I had. So,
I agree with those changes.
okay, good.
Based on approving bills for the last 8 years, I totally agree with this.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh, and the only other thing I wanted to note is, so we do look at the operating and capital budgets a little bit separately. If we're budgeting money for a specific capital project and that needs to change, and we're not going to do the project anymore, or there's going to be some changes there, that we do take back to the Finance Committee just because they do want to know what's going on. And if they, approve $50,000 for a project, then it's not going to happen. They want to know about it. So that's just one exception with the line item offsets, that if we're changing the direction of capital funds, that we do take to the Finance Committee. So.
And I'm actually just, right now, as you're saying, I'm going to make a note to add a line in here that covers that. I mean, it doesn't need to
Okay.
be real wordy or anything like that.
Right.
Corey, just one thing here, I guess, not to imply that there's any sort of actual issue, but just to sort of get it out there for everyone. In terms of these adjustments from one line item to another, and like you said, managing within the overall budget, is there any sort of implication there with regards to our audit or anything like that, in terms of, here's what the council approved, here's how things were actually spent, from that type of perspective?
There's nothing that's come up yet. What I can tell you is that different municipalities do it differently. So there are municipalities that do actually do formal budget amendments each time, and I really hope we don't ever get into the point of doing that, because then you're amending your budget every single month. So I mean, it is something that you know, at some point, you know, I could see somebody, you know, saying something about it, that we should be actually amending the budget. I know the county actually does that, where they amend their budget, and they literally are amending their budget every month. So if, you know, if we can avoid that, I think that's probably everyone's preference.
Yeah, the monthly batch of amendments. And I suppose also, like, when you have a practice like that, what it tends to prompt is just making the budget more and more vague in order to avoid having to do so much of that, which I think it does make sense to have your budgetary document be fairly granular, but then also have some flexibility for actual real life when it comes up.
Do you think it would be appropriate if we were going to lean towards that? Not that I want to, but if we put a dollar amount in there somehow, that if it was an amount over, you know, a certain amount, that then it would need to be amended, otherwise, you know, because, just a suggestion, I don't even know if that's the correct way to do it, and we would definitely need a vote on that in this body, but just a suggestion that to offset that, so we don't have to go there first, that maybe that would be a way to, I'm not going to say around it, but a way to not have to make amendments.
Sure, kind of a backup plan if we ever got pushed into a corner on that, that could be our compromise solution, so.
Something that would make sense, that if it's, we don't want people moving around $10,000 from this account to that account, but $10 is another story.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, you know, I mean, sometimes the numbers can be large. I mean, you know, I think we all know that the fire department has been understaffed for a while as far as, you know, what their lineup has been. So we've definitely had those budget line items be, sorry, JB, we're not saying anything bad about you, but walked in at just the perfect time. But, you know, in that case, where we've had those salary line items be way under, but then overtime be way over, you know, by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and we haven't done a formal budget amendment, you know, for that. But sometimes you do get significant, especially with those kind of personnel issues where you have vacancies and need to offset that with overtime, it can be significant. But I think that, you know, the commission is certainly aware of what's going on there, so.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in that specific context, it's like, yes, it's going from here to here, but it's still wages. You know, it's like, it's not like it's being transferred to something totally of a different type of category, so.
Corey, does the council approve the budget, or do they approve each line of the budget?
Well, they approved the budget document, so.
So based on what they're presented,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that they are approving the entirety of what's included in the budget document.
well, then I was thinking of Commissioner Moore's suggestion, maybe a percentage would be better, percentage of change than an actual dollar amount.
You're talking about as
You know,
far.
if there's a sudden 25% adjustment to something, you know. I'm not talking about, you know, 1 or 2%, but I mean, if there's a dramatic, you know, maybe percentage would be easier to understand than dollar amount.
Sure, yeah. And are you thinking just?
Again, it's only, I don't think that it's ever happened, and maybe it has, but just to prevent the what-ifs that Jerry was talking about.
Yeah.
I like the system the way it's run, don't get me wrong.
Okay, good. So, but you're just talking about if we had to change the system, kind of some of the potential compromise solution that we could throw out there in that case. Okay, yeah.
Which has got me pulling up this year's budget as an example. I'm thinking maybe just for everybody on the board, what I could do is grab the pages from the actual budget document that the council approves that pertain to police and fire, snip those out as a separate document and send them around to everyone, just for your convenience. My guess is that you might be modestly surprised at how simple it is, actually. I mean, especially when you compare, it's like, here's the budget document and here's what you see in terms of like the payment of claims. And it's like, $8.70 to Fastenal, this much for gas, this for a cell phone bill. And seeing how those two things compare in terms of, the fine detail, the budget is, I hate to maybe paint it the wrong way, but kind of broad strokes in a certain sense.
It's kind of general.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's likely that there's not really any genuine issues here. But I've got a note here that I just made to talk to the chiefs individually and say, what is the typical type of transfer you're doing for this? So like if we were going to establish some threshold that would then need a review and go before a body, to at least like have a number where that's going to be pretty uncommon.
Realistic, yeah.
But I think that would probably make a lot of sense to have something like that, just as sort of a backstop to avoid any sort of like eyebrow-raising transfers. So.
And I guess when you talk to the chiefs too, is just to get their opinions on too, if that would create then tying their hands up until this commission could meet to approve those things. I'm kind of on the point that we don't want to hinder their ability to do their jobs.
Right.
So,
Agreed. And we do have the power and ability to call an emergency meeting if we need to. Not that we want to, but we do have that ability. And if it's something that rises to that situation, then we would consider it for sure, I would think.
And like Corey mentioned, typically when you're doing changes that are substantially large like that, usually it is capital items.
Right.
In which case it is a different calculus, so.
I just have a couple of typos.
Yeah.
So bottom of page 9, full paragraph. On your redlining.
Okay.
However.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, and then just a couple of words over, it says shall be. Shall be, right there.
Oh, yep.
On page 10, I'll wait until you're ready.
Well, just real quick, because I know Corey's time constrained, is there anything else anyone wanted to talk about budget accountability items?
Other than give us a bigger budget.
I'll see what I can do. So,
Be careful what you wish for.
so.
Come on, shared revenue.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, thanks, everyone, and thannds for getting me to my dentist appointment on time, although I'd rather be here to be quite
I'd have made it quicker if I'd have known that's what it was for.
Yeah.
We'd have put you on the first part.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, Corey.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next one you were mentioning here, just typo
Yeah,
stuff.
you have successful. Your note here is this makes sense, but we need more clarity on what successful means.
Yeah, and I was just staring at that recently.
How about the word selected?
Well, I don't even know if we need to just strike it and just keep it as the rank the candidates.
Yeah, that works too.
There's no reason to debate successful, just.
Yeah, I guess the thought is that at the time that this process is going on, you've established some baseline, here are the requirements you must have to even be in the running. And, failure to hit any of those means we're not even ranking you. We're not even going to look at you. Suppose that you're the 12th ranked person out of 12. It's like if all these people say no, it's like, no, we're not offering it to you because you failed to meet these basic requirements. I really don't think that there's a problem with the word successful there. It's just that the attorney in me looks at something like that and says, oh, that's a really squishy word, subject to a lot of different meanings. But I think at the same time, you can make a very good case that this body gets to basically on the fly determine what that word means and interpret it. And most likely in any given example, there's not going to be a whole lot of ability to debate whether or not somebody is a quote-unquote successful candidate or not. And frankly, these hiring decisions are made with such a great latitude of discretion, so long as you're not rejecting somebody on the basis in like their membership in a protected class or something like that. Generally, you're going to be on very sound footing to just pick the person you want and reject people that you don't want. So I've kind of got that highlighted for myself, just in case somewhere down the stretch here I come up with some turn of phrase that seems really, really good, but I'm not sure it necessarily needs to be changed. So there you go. That's a long way of saying you can just ignore that.
All right.
And obviously, the changes here are from what Tom had shared with us last month, which he obviously has gone through this procedure more than once in various capacities. So I didn't have any issue with it. The only change I believe I inserted myself was the very first two lines, and the line in the third paragraph, or excuse me, the first two line under procedures, where it says when a vacancy occurs, PFC may appoint someone to serve as acting. Obviously, we've done that in the past. And then a couple paragraphs below that, this is the middle of page 9, the reference to 1936 sub 7. That's just an obscure part of the open records law that allows the identities of candidates to be withheld until they're identified as, quote, final candidates. And typically the threshold that comes into play there is once you whittle it down to 5 or less remaining candidates, they're considered final candidates. And that's just so that you cast a bigger net for potential candidates where people don't have to upset the apple cart of their current job potentially by having it become public instantly the minute they throw their hat in the ring for taking a job elsewhere, which is a useful thing to have. We have in the past had some issues in terms of the application documents not containing like a checkbox, because they actually have to elect themselves into that. Like they have to say, they have to affirmatively tell you they want their name withheld until it has to be disclosed. And but that's more of a matter of just like when we're putting the application documents together, making sure we have a line in there for the person to indicate that, not something that has to go into this policy.
I have a question in regards to the commission will appoint a screening committee to screen candidates. I guess I'd like to know the other commissioners' thoughts behind that word will, because to me it makes the understanding that it's not just going to be this body, this commission, that we will be appointing.
Do you want to change it to may? Because if you put may, it gives you the option that you could do it or not.
It's wills, you are going to be getting a screening committee. I mean, I guess want that for discussion to what everyone thinks about that. Tom, I know this was your
Yeah,
area
well,
here.
we're obviously going to be putting together a screening committee. Are you saying who's going to be part of that, or?
Right, because that sentence then, it's basically, to me, it's stating that it's going to be beyond just the commission, that we're going to be looking at other people to be involved in the process. So I just want to make sure that we.
Well, my purpose for doing will would
Okay.
be that the committee as a whole would be putting that screening committee together. And
So you're looking at having outside, a screening committee of like.
you may not. That doesn't really define who would be part of that screening committee, because I would imagine you're going to have multiple interviews anyways when we go through a fire chief or a police chief process. That first screening committee, the reason why I would use the word will would be, as a PFC as a whole, would be deciding what that screening committee is and who would be on that board, which I think
So
would be
you're
most
saying
appropriate. As a board, we would decide who
It
that
wouldn't be
is.
just one person like the president deciding who's going to
Right.
be the screening committee. I could agree with that.
Just to be clear, the language as it's currently written would allow for the PFC to select itself as the screening committee.
Yeah.
Maybe that sounds a little weird, especially since in the past it has been comprised of additional people as well, but that would be consistent with this, so.
Well, then what we're looking at doing is changing the way we've done it in the past. Because in the past, we've all taken the applications, talked about them, and we've all said, this person, yes, we'd like to see we move forward, this person, no, doesn't have the qualifications. So what we're looking at is what I'm hearing you say is adding another, or taking away that process, and then a couple of people, in theory.
That would be just defining that as the process.
Okay.
And we would discuss that as a board before we got to that point.
Yeah, I think what the difference is we're not changing that part of the process. The part of the process that's being changed by this language right here is who's going to make those decisions. Because before, the policy said it's going to involve the sheriff and the city council and a bunch of politicians, which actually goes against the whole optional powers thing and shouldn't have been in there to start with, in my mind.
Okay, I guess I was going back further
Yeah.
in time. I understand.
So this would give us the flexibility to assign and say, as a whole committee, not the president, not the police chief or the fire chief, say, as the commission says, this is what the screening committee is going to be. And it could be us, it could be us plus whoever we wanted to add, or we could all say, you know what? I can't be there, I'm not going to do it, so it's going to be you four. Or it could be whatever. But it puts the control in the commission's hands, not one person's. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a realistic way to do it, so that one person doesn't have all the power.
Yeah, it's, the change just provides more discretion to the PFC to guide how this process will play out. I mean, you could do it exactly the way that the struck language says. You just have to take an action to say it's going to be 2 commission members, city HR manager, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so basically, it'll open it up for a discussion point then at that,
Right.
At that point in
meeting,
time.
Yeah.
to be able to vote on, to say, we feel that XYZ should be present on this.
Knock down, drag out. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with these changes. I think
Okay.
they're good. I guess I went back to the screening process of when we first started, not when we actually moved into the interview process.
Yeah.
I just don't want to
Yeah.
get those two confused.
Exactly. I mean, you see, it's the next paragraph there that talks about the interview process, and this is, yeah. This preceding paragraph, it's, screening candidates to determine who even gets an interview. So, and obviously this, one thing this allows is, the PFC can take stock of the personalities, background, and knowledge of the given people who are in various positions at the time. Perhaps there is a city human resources manager or whomever, local official or whatever it is, that just whoever happens to have that role at the time, you say, we think that person's input would really, really be valuable here. Let's put it in a motion to put them in the group.
So you can take as much input or little input as you want from sources.
Yeah, and I envision that, it's the decision on who's going to be involved in that screening committee is going to be something that'll be on an agenda. It'll be discussed. There'll be an opportunity for people to comment. If, as a member of the public thinks that you need input from a community member, you can, hear what they have to say about that and decide whether or not you agree.
Oh, good. I think everybody, Denise, does that answer your question? Okay, then let's move forward. You want to go to section 3.03 then? If we can just kind of read through them, and if people have questions, we'll just do that and try and get through this with as little pain as possible.
Did we get through 3.02 the last time we spoke?
No, it looks good.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other changes for 3.02?
If anybody's got anything to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just like the third-party complaint stuff, I wrote that up kind of in the back of my mind. I had sort of like a probable cause standard in, I mean, when, criminal action starts and goes before the judge, the prosecutor has to be able to explain a set of facts which, if true, would constitute a violation of, the criminal code. Failing to do so, the case dies on the vine right then and there, where, I've definitely seen some instances in my years as city attorney where there are just, allegations from someone And it gets treated as, we've got to spin up a full investigation of this. And I'm going, even if all this stuff is true, like literally the words on the page that the person submits, I don't see a violation of any policy here. In which case, you should have an option to be able to say, no, we don't need to pursue this further, because they haven't even alleged something that rises to the level of a violation. That's all I was really trying to do there. Can't imagine that there's any pushback on that, but yeah, the previous version, it was just like any complaint has to be investigated, and that's going to lead to some weird stuff. Okay. Corey had actually very briefly mentioned wages in terms of where does authority lie. It's pretty clear. 3.03 the Common Council does establish that. They have to approve the contracts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think that there's a whole lot that needs to be added or changed there. I'm certainly open to any comments that anyone has, though.
Looks good to me. Keep going.
All right, residency, got a reference to the state statute there. I believe that did get updated back when changes occurred to that a number of years ago.
Where we are with residency now, we've changed that a few years ago where we are allowing.
Yeah, state law changed, so we had no choice.
It's a number of miles, isn't it?
It's not even that anymore, is it? Because I thought it just opened up that basically they can live anywhere they want.
Or they got to be able to respond in a certain amount of time?
It changes a little bit, JB. It's different for fire than it is for police. It has to do with county lines to a certain extent. But really what it ultimately became for us more recently was just a negotiated item. And we said, you can live wherever the heck you want, as long as you can get to work on time.
Correct. So the statute would fall into place for my management staff at the fire department, and then the contract that our local bargained this last round, we got rid of residency. Prior to this last contract, they had to live within the boundaries of Portage County. That had been in place. That's something that the local had negotiated years ago, and we just recently got rid of as of October 4th of 2022 last year with signing the new 3-year contract with our local. There is no residency now for firefighter paramedics within the Stevens Point Fire Department.
That's right. Here we go. The statute does allow us to have a requirement to live within 15 miles of the jurisdictional boundaries. So think of the crazy irregular boundary we have for the city. It becomes a very strange GIS homework project.
Is that for fire or for fire and police or?
Law enforcement, fire, or emergency personnel.
Are you sure that didn't change? Because I thought that all changed with state statute down, I want to say about 5 years ago.
So the change was actually so the statute changed in 2013, and then it didn't finally get settled in terms of legal arguments until 2016. That was the city of Milwaukee case.
Yep.
So what Milwaukee was doing is saying, no, you have to live in the city limits.
Right.
And it became a local powers and statewide authority debate. And so essentially they're like, well, if it's within 15 miles of the boundaries of the city of Milwaukee, we might as well just throw it in the dumpster, because that's, a huge area. So, yeah, ultimately the Supreme Court said that anything that was more restrictive than this is preempted by the state statute. So
state
So
statute.
residency, in a sense, is gone for both departments.
No.
no, it still exists for police in a certain form. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I think it's that circle.
27 miles.
Yeah.
27 miles from the police department.
From headquarters.
And then again, our union, we got rid of that in the last bargaining session, and the management staff follows the statute.
Just to make things clear.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah, just to, state statute and an ordinance or rule created by the common council pursuant to that section, basically just saying, you know, you just got to look to the law that's in place, so. Okay, original appointment, police officers, firefighter, paramedics.
Logan, I just had one thing. In section 3.04, we talk about chiefs and assistant chiefs. I know that holds true yet with the police department, with the fire department. There's been some inclusions within the management rank, non-represented. What do we have?
Battalion.
3, 4. If we could just change that language, management personnel, or do we need to identify chief? I guess that's my only question, because there's some changes with names that, what is it going to look in 5 years too, so.
Sure. I guess what I'd like to say right now about that is that is an issue that's being actively discussed internally right now.
Okay.
And there are some differing takes on it. And certainly whatever we come up with, I want to be accurately reflected in here, but I don't really think it would be good for us to discuss that right at this moment.
I would agree.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pending, basically. 3.04 is pending.
And one thing I also wanted to clarify on the last one was the management staff that is on the line, or my battalion chiefs, they follow the local contract for their requirements. So they would have no residency, if that makes sense. So they are on a 56-hour work week, even though they are part of the managerial staff. They follow, due to all of the requirements, they follow the labor agreements through department policies and procedures, not city policies and procedures like my 40-hour chiefs.
We just need that spelled out so that we're all clear on that.
And that's through, department policy and procedures as well. So just want
But
to.
they're not represented,
Correct.
but yet they follow what's.
Correct.
Which I know sounds weird. A bit of the backstory there.
We don't need that right now.
You don't know right now? All right. I'll just put it this way. Our stance was that those things did not need to be bargained because they're part of policy, not part of the contract. However, it was part of the discussions that occurred at bargaining in order to get an agreement on certain aspects of that transformation that did have to be bargained.
Yes.
Okay. Section 4.01, is that where we are?
Yeah, and so with regards to this one, I mean, you can just see a whole lot of comments from me about, well, you know, what do we actually do? So I'm very lightly involved, if ever, in the initial appointment procedures, unless they're interesting sort of questions that come up regarding eligibility or, you know, some sort of, you know, strange circumstance that would imply some type of equal protection issue or something like that. So I'm curious to hear from the chiefs, just, is there anything in this section that jumps off the page at you as just not reflecting what we actually do day to day for hiring?
Yep.
So you're talking 4.01?
Correct.
And further, or is it just 4.01?
I think probably just 4.01.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's the promotions and probationary period stuff. Oddly enough, I do get asked questions about more frequently, so I'm a little more up to speed on how that stuff works and what some of the wrinkles in it have been over the years.
The chiefs create the eligibility list, and then they present it to the commission. So it's the chief's list with the commission's approval. Wouldn't that be accurately
That's the way it's
stated?
been operating.
Yeah.
But are the chiefs required to create an eligibility list?
See, that's a holdover from a long time ago.
No, we would not be required, but if you do establish one, obviously that is set
Then you
by
have
the
to use
POC. Right.
That is correct. So we are not required to establish that list. If we do establish the list, we are required to use it in its entirety, and before we can move on to the next process.
Who requires that?
That's 6213, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes. And a few other things that we've been doing through the hiring process, promotional process, appointments or probationary periods, is we've been bringing those names in front of the PFC for approval, primarily the month before with the recommendations of the chiefs. On the hiring process, though, we have been deviating from this policy due to the circumstances I know that I've been facing in the fire department, with the ability to start or at least offer a conditional offer of employment, start the process, and as long as they complete the process within the requirements and have the approval of the PFC before their start date, we have continued to hire those individuals.
Okay, going back to the list. What is the benefit of creating a list if you have to go all the way through it? And has there been times that you did not want to go all the way through it, that it would be a bad thing to create a list?
So we have not created a list within the fire department for several years due to the shortages that we've had. We have been hiring pretty much we haven't even been able to create lists. We've been exhausting our candidate pools before we can actually create that list. In years past, I can speak on that, you didn't put somebody on the list that didn't meet the requirements and you were willing to offer a job to at some point while that list was still valid. And again, if something happened from the time the list was created and the time you offer that candidate that position, that would come out in that conditional offer at that point when you would offer that to them. They wouldn't be able to complete the appropriate needs to be able to be hired then.
What we're doing now is we're giving the chiefs flexibility.
I agree. I'm just wondering why we even want to have that list option in there anymore.
So even with this next one, with Officer Rossick retiring, we've got an open position. So we're going to be hiring for that position. The process started on the 10th of June.
Yep.
We also know that right now we're going to have 2 more retirements in January.
Correct.
It's extremely hard to get qualified candidates. And when you get them, what I'm going to be coming back to the PFC like I did last time is asking if we can do an eligibility list if we happen to get 3 good applicants in this process, to try to keep those 2 so that they can start in January. And that's when I would use an eligibility list. Most of the time we don't use them or we don't implement them, but if you're lucky enough to get good qualified applicants, as long as somebody else doesn't take them, that's why we would do an eligibility list.
And I would agree with the chief. 2 reasons why we want to have the ability to create that list is, one, it's a lot of hours put into an actual process and actually running and creating that list. The second is exactly what he was talking about. If we are fortunate enough to have enough candidates that are qualified, and we'd like the candidates to be able to create that list, because once they know they've been put on that eligibility list, they tend to stay true to that department, and they're willing to wait as long as they know they have that job coming.
Okay,
And
so that's the reason there, more than something internally, is it tends to hold
candidates,
a candidate in place to be eligible for a job.
It states in here that the eligibility list is good for 1 year. We've had the flexibility to make it, like, for example, for this one, if we happen to get 3, my request would be to hold it for probably 5 to 6 months or half a year. And you've given us that opportunity to hold it for 3 months or 6 months. Because obviously if it's not filled, then we've got to start the process over again.
Right. I just wanted
So
to
the
be
chief can
clear.
determine the length of the list, the timeline.
That's what you've allowed us to do, but I see in here it states
It's a year.
It states that eligibility lists are retained until exhausted or for a period of 1 year from the date of enactment.
Is this
It
something too that
self-destructs.
maybe the chiefs want to, outside of here, maybe review with Logan to, because it's really affecting them the most, to how, and you know what I mean, to see what they can come together with, and then maybe we can touch back on this?
Sure. I don't have a problem with that.
Both your input?
No problem at all. And actually, Logan has given us that opportunity already. I apologize. I just haven't had the time to sit down
Okay.
with him and discuss it.
Not a problem.
As long as the list option has a value to it, and that's what I was trying to get at, is what that value is to the community and the departments. So, yeah, I'm good with that.
It's like Barry Alvarez doing the family visit, the 4-star linebacker out of Muckwonago. That's what it's like. One thing I want to mention really quickly, there's a bit in the statute here, whenever we have a vacancy in a position that's a promoted position, the statute actually says, the chief shall appoint subordinates subject to approval by the board. Such appointments shall be made by promotion when this can, quote, be done with advantage, whatever the heck that means. So we're almost always endeavoring to promote people when there's a promoted position vacancy, which then it kicks it all the way down the line, and usually you end up trying to find somebody to take an entry-level position. But there's literally a statutory requirement for us to do that, provided it can be, quote, done with advantage, again, whatever the heck that means. But that is just an interesting wrinkle in here, so.
That's an interesting statement from. Okay, let's see if we can finish up with section 4, because we're going to have to go back and pick up those other agenda items. We just moved 10 ahead to get Corey out of here on time. You're still on the agenda. So let's finish 4, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so this change in so this section, this is promotions in the police and fire departments. Nothing really super substantial there, more just like stylistic, at least in the first paragraph, stylistic language changes. The previous one just said Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission, which doesn't need to be spelled out in its entirety, reserves the right to approve or reject promotional recommendations. Just that reserves the right. It's like you don't need to notify everyone that it's like, hey, here's our statutory authority. Submit recommended promotions. The PFC acts upon them at its regularly scheduled meeting in the month following the month in which the promotion request is submitted. Is there ever a need to super fast expedite a promotion? Maybe we need to have something in there. Maybe take out the regular meeting stuff and allow that there could be a special meeting to do that. Chiefs, thoughts?
I don't think so.
I figured that type of thing usually, especially since somebody you can have somebody as an acting capacity and all that. Yeah, okay, so the chief, the stuff removed here, the chief is responsible to publish promotional procedures and timeline prior to the start of a and then just saying labor agreements regarding promotional procedures must be adhered to. We don't have to include anything that says we'll abide by the labor agreements. The statutes do a pretty good job of requiring that anyway. Just saying the CBA applies here unless a represented employee is being promoted to a non-represented position. Obviously, then it's, you're moving out of the union. So basically just a reflection of, the reality and basic law there. Okay, so I took out a few things in this section on 4.03. Whoever had written this document ages ago was fond of putting these things in like the PFC must by affirmative motion do such and such, or the commission must act in open session. And I mean, that's just like basic Robert's Rules stuff. Like it takes a motion and it takes a second and a vote to do something. And open meetings law says what can be done in closed session. Everything else by default has to be done in open session. So you'll notice I've removed basically every single reference to any of that type of stuff throughout the document. So written review of probationary employees during their final 2 months, submitted to the PFC with a recommendation regarding their probationary status. The PFC can move them person into regular status, extend it for a period of time, or terminate them for failure to meet expectations. Pretty straightforward. Doesn't need to be complicated here. Yeah, and here, unique circumstances, if it precludes the action from occurring prior to the expiration, chief can explain what's going on, request an extension of it. That could be real short, probably, maybe 1 month in order to just allow the meeting to occur. But then the PFC would need to act on that request for an extension, or it's by default extended for 1 month if you can't, if you're unable to meet in order to do that. So just kind of simplifying this, I think we all know that the real meat and potatoes of these probationary decisions is the report from the chief and the recommendation from the chief. And typically, I would expect that you're going to concur on those things. Any other sort of weird wrinkles that either of you would want to add to that? Usually, it's pretty straightforward. The complicated things I get asked about relate primarily to if somebody is not successfully completing their probationary status and we're trying to recoup costs from them. And that's always done per labor agreements, which we then have supplemented with basically contracts with them at the outset, if I recall the procedure correctly.
Actually, due to some of the many changes in the fire department, we actually put that now into our conditional offer of employment that the fire department puts out, that is part of recouping the cost in that if they don't meet their 1-year probationary period.
Yeah. Okay. Which unfortunately we have actually had to do a few times. Yeah, that doesn't need to be contained in this document, though.
Chief, does that cover management people as well as rank and file?
Yes. So again, whether it's management staff or rank and file, that is part of their conditional offer, and they have to meet their probationary period. Now, the probationary period is different for our management staff and rank and file. Rank and file is 12 months, and management staff is 6 months.
Okay.
So here, 4.04, this is the big power grab by my office here. Just putting myself in the lead negotiator role. That's basically just reflecting how we've done things. I've kind of ended up being the hub when it comes to those things. It's worked well. We haven't been following any sort of strict structure, like we better consult our procedural guidelines to make sure that we have exactly the right people in the room, that sort of thing. Typically, it's been myself, chief, 1 or more assistant chiefs, HR manager, comptroller, treasurer. That's usually the group we've got. On the labor side, you've got their bargaining committee, which almost always is going to include the union president, usually a representative from IAFF or is it AFSCME? Rich Berghaus? No, it's WPPA. It's been AFSCME in the past, I know, but no, that's transit. I know, because that's Teamsters.
WPPA is Rich.
Yeah, somebody from the sort of broader union organizing group. And we get together, we're just about to do this with police. There's what's sort of like an initial exchange of, here's bullet points that we'd like this process to address. And then kind of shake hands, part ways, everybody chews on those for a bit. Then we get to the next meeting, we start really talking nitty-gritty details. Usually we try to put off the wage discussion, which tends to be the whale that just swallows everything else. Try to put that off until a couple sessions in so that we can actually focus on some of the non-wage items without having the discussions get bogged down talking percentages and dollars. But generally, it is helpful to not have that process be overly specified by policy, because every union negotiation whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever, kind of takes on a little bit of its own character. Because the personalities change, the people involved change, and being able to be a little nimble, a little flexible in who you're involving and who you're not involving has a lot of value to it. When I first came into this office, one of the things I actually made a point of, like, very early on was to start learning this stuff, because at the time we brought in Dean Dietrich to do this work on behalf of the city and the PFC. And that's a reasonably expensive endeavor. There's quite a bit of hours that go into that. So Dean graciously took me under his wing, taught me a lot about this stuff, and then eventually kind of stepped out of the way. Now, we do occasionally bring in outside counsel on, as needed. We did that on the last PD contract. Brought in an attorney to Jim Macy to help us through some of the wage issues. But again, it's like, we weren't having to we didn't want to have to consult this document to be like, okay, what is the exact procedure we'd have to follow in order to get approval to do that? And it was more like, okay, well, can we get the council to approve, bringing in an attorney and paying them a bill? So basically just, any comments here, anything that you'd like to see changed? That's my general approach, is let's simplify this. What we're doing generally works pretty well, but I'm open to any comments, obviously.
Do you have the option, as the way this is written, do you have the option to still bring in outside counsel if you want?
Yeah, it has it in here. The last part of the sentence.
I mean, you don't have to, but
Unless the
you can if you
PFC and Common Council have approved the hiring of outside legal counsel for such purposes.
Okay.
So basically, I'd make the recommendation, and a lot of times what we're able to do is reach out to outside counsel and even get a bit of advice on simple matters before we take the step of really bringing them on officially, because generally they're pretty helpful and they want to be seen as being helpful because they want your business. So it's like, hey, Jim, we're dealing with this complicated wage issue. The union's trying to do X, Y, and Z for a comparable. And I might be able to actually get some tidbits of information out of him on that without having to do anything official. Literally just pick up the phone and call him.
Well, my main concern was that the option is there. You don't have to, but it is there.
Yeah, this doesn't preclude it, obviously, at all.
Any other questions or comments on the rest of Section 4?
The union grievances, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
All right. So your last sentence, first paragraph, grievance hearing.
It's an incomplete sentence,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, so likely what I meant to type there was due to confidential matters or other matters that are required by statute to be held in closed session. Most grievances we face are contract administration grievances, where there is no ability to do them in closed session. We're just talking about what's the meaning of this. Does the person have to get paid overtime? Do they have to get paid for double ambulance runs, that type of thing. But if it's a personnel matter, then we get into the complicated questions of it can be held in closed session unless the person agrees to it being held in open session. So, yeah, just need to finish the sentence there.
And the only thing with Section 4 is that we'll have to pick up the next time is the exit interview, because that's been left off from that section. And I know Logan has not yet laid eyes on that, so.
Well, trust me, I've laid eyes on it.
Okay, so adding in the exit interviews?
Yes.
Okay,
To that section.
all right. What I would like to do next month is, if we can finish this up, if you can go through and bring us sections 1 through 4 retyped and with the changes that we've made for review, and we can at least vote on passing that next month, and then go through sections 5 and 6 next month, make changes. That way, if anything comes up and whatever, we know that this is done and modified, and we can have it in the books as changed. And we can get 5 and 6 well on their way next month. If everybody agrees with that, that would be, appreciate that. Anybody see any?
We can certainly do that. What I'm hoping to have for next month is a full draft document.
If we can get the whole thing done next month, that would be fantastic.
And not only that, I'm going to, prior to that, go through some comparable documents from other cities and look if I find anything in those that are just topics that aren't even covered in here, bring forward some examples of, hey, perhaps we could add this just because it's a useful thing to have to create some clarity. So that's the intent.
Plus the exit interview stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So if there's no other questions or comments on that, we're going to move on and go back to agenda item number 7. Questions or comments before we get there? Okay, agenda item number 7, discussion possible action, filling new deputy fire marshal emergency management coordinator position with Justin Malin. Chief,
You can come sit down here if you want.
welcome,
All right, I guess I can sit down then.
or you could stay there, whichever you like.
That works. All right, so after a second round of interviews with the Stevens Point Fire Department trying to fill their deputy fire marshal / emergency management coordinator for the city, we offered a conditional offer of employment to Justin Malin. And again, if everything is completed in his pre-employment process and with the PFC's approval, we would like to start this individual on August 7th.
Chief, is this gentleman a present member of our department, or is he coming in from outside?
No, he is an external candidate.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? We need a motion.
I have one question. This is a newly created position, correct?
Correct. This position is a deputy fire marshal / emergency management coordinator. What does that mean? This person will work a 40-hour work week. They are going to be the second position now in our fire bureau. Their immediate supervisor will be Division Chief Sinner. Their primary objectives on a day-to-day basis will be code enforcement or building inspections, fire investigations after a fire, and public education or pub ed. 1 day a week, this individual will be the city EM coordinator and will focus their responsibilities on that. I've also have agreed with the city that if we were to have a large situation in the city like we did several years ago with the winds, or other situations where we might need an emergency management coordinator in place for several weeks, making sure that we get the proper paperwork filled out, working with other departments, this person would then focus primarily on that, and the bureau would be without that deputy fire marshal for a period of time, making sure the city was up to date.
Now, back in, I believe it was March, we had discussions on the fire department assuming the city's emergency management position. Is this it?
Yes, this is it. So this will be the city's EM coordinator. They asked it to be a director. They asked if I was interested in being the EM director for the city. Unfortunately, with everything else going on, we talked about this as directors within the city and felt this was the best place to put this as a EM coordinator under my direction as a director or chief of a department.
So that stipend that was at one point going to another department is now being reverted?
Correct.
To the fire department?
Yes.
Okay.
And prior to, and we did not post that position until that financial impact was secured, because I was advertising it with that stipend, hoping to get better qualified candidates.
Okay.
Is he going to be management or?
That individual will be management, yes.
Okay.
And that was just a portion of the salary, correct? Because that was a part of that
Correct.
person's duties that has now been
Yes, so starting salary for this individual was $55,000 and some change, and with the EM stipend, it was an extra $13,000 at this point. Starting salary that we advertised was a little over $68,000.
And just one clarification, this individual will report directly to you and will not be, is there anything?
This person will report directly to the Division Chief Center as far as the Deputy Fire Marshal position is concerned, and they will report directly to me as the Emergency Management Coordinator.
Okay, before we have any more conversation, we need to have a motion on the floor.
I'll Kirschling make a motion to hire Justin Mallon as the new Deputy Fire Marshal / Emergency Management Coordinator.
Okay, do we have a second?
Let me add pending all
Need a second.
department regulations
Okay,
are
yeah.
met.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further comments or considerations? You've been pretty quiet over there. Nothing. Okay, seems like we've, all in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries to hire as Deputy Fire Marshal Emergency Management Coordinator position, Mr. Justin Malin,
Starting August 7th, right?
August 7th.
starting August 7th, as long as he meets all requirements. Agenda item number 8, discussion with possible action on moving forward with the employment of entry-level firefighter paramedic Jared Higgins. Chief.
So we ran another round of qualified candidates through our hiring process. And at this time, we have made a conditional offer of employment to Jared Higgins as an entry-level firefighter paramedic. Again, pending the completion of all of the requirements of the Stevens Point Fire Department and that conditional offer, he would start also on August 7th with the approval of the PFC today.
Good. Motion.
I'll move on a motion that Jared Higgins be offered a conditional offer of employment on August 7th, correct?
Yes.
August 7th, pending requirements established by the fire chief.
Kirschling second.
Okay. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the fire chief's report, EMS report.
Just 2 additions to the previous topic. Just wanted to let everyone know with the starting of the next academy, August 7th, we'll have 2 candidates in that academy. And it has now been extended from 4 weeks to 5 weeks with our new field training paramedic position and doing more practical time and working with our Division Chief Ewing of training. We feel it is more appropriate. It's been going very well. And after these 2 are on board, we will be 2 entry-level firefighter paramedic positions short in our department at that point. So at this time, last year we hired 12 candidates, and this year we have already hired 9 with 2 additional coming. So a house of 46, we're going to have 23 new employees within 16 months. We are a completely new fire department.
Indeed.
Thank you for that explanation.
All right. Fire Chief's report. Just wanted to let everyone know that Truck 22 is in service. We did a push-in ceremony, and last night at the Common Council meeting, I did offer up, subcommittee meeting, I did offer up next week. I will be bringing Truck 22 to Common Council next week, a half hour early, to show all the alders what $1.4 million gets them in a fire apparatus. And I think that's important. Also,
through a flex grant, we do have our new Water One or boat operational. It went into operation June 23rd. It was deployed for Riverfront Rendezvous, and we did have great success with that. One other thing I did want to point out in the fire chief's report was the monthly training and all of the different training we've been doing. Training is on the rise. The standards that we're using, basically in our day-to-day operations, Monday through Friday, our members are training every day, basically from 1:30 to 4:30 every day on a different topic. And with the new deputy fire marshal in place, that is going to allow the line to continue to train even more. And we're going to see our numbers going up to also help not only with the ISO ratings, but really what it's about is getting back to the basics in our firehouse and teaching our new employees how to fight fire and continue to be safe. So that's important. Also, under the EMS report, we did work with the Parks Department in providing the city municipal pool staff additional CPR and spinal immobilization and drowning training. Went very well. We just had a recruit graduation ceremony for 2 of our recruits on June 16th, and one of our current members, firefighter paramedic Connor Pilot, was appointed to a field training paramedic position. Again, Senior Open Riverfront Rendezvous, it was busy, but we made it through it. And lastly, I would just like to point out one thing on the overall operating budget for the Stevens Point Fire Department. Under capital improvements, training infrastructure, if anybody has any questions, they'll see that we are 655% in the red.
Yep.
The reason for that is the Stevens Point Fire Department just finished paying off their new 3-story burn facility that is going to be erected out at our new training center for our members to be able to train in. It is state-of-the-art. It is a great addition to our training center out there. We are in the process of working with city engineering and DPW to get those footings and foundations poured. Once that's been completed, the product that is on site, again, will be erected and in service hopefully early this fall. So that is why we're over in that capital improvement project, and that has been worked out with the comptroller's office, our department, and the partnership we have with Mid-State Technical College in their 10-year plan with the ability to give us $250,000 towards our facility.
Chief, a couple of questions for you. On that, are we on target for the plan for that whole training center? Are we still online?
For right now, we are on target. This year, again, we want to get that 3-story facility up and running. Also, we are looking to get our trench and collapse area completed. And then moving into next year, we will see how the capital goes for the end of the year. We have budgeted for a new Station 3 at that facility, and I'm not sure if that's going to pan out or not, and it might be pushed into 25, but it is definitely needed in order for us to be able to facilitate training. Also get a place to put some of our vehicles or apparatuses to maintain safety with the 2 buildings we have right now, because we're really starting to put a lot of stuff into Station 1, Station 2's apparatus bay.
That leads me to my second question for you of 3. Well, the new truck, where is it housed, 1 or 2?
Truck 22 is housed at Station 2 as the primary apparatus, running out of Station 2 with Med 2 as our truck company in the city.
And we could use a little extension on that building, I take it, with the size of our vehicles now.
Our vehicles are getting much larger. This last one was an extra 6 feet in length. The Station 1 was built in 1967, and they weren't prepared for the apparatuses that we have in today's fire service.
And my last question for you, are all these new people, are they all paramedics as well as firefighters?
All of our entry-level firefighter paramedic positions have been filled with paramedics. Some of our management staff or chief officers are not paramedics. They have EMS background, either as EMR, basics, advanced EMTs, but not all of them are paramedics.
Okay, but the guys
On the line.
ambulances are, and so we're fulfilling our requirement as far as licensing.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the chief and his report? I'll make a motion to accept the report and place it on file. Seconded by Ostrowski. Questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 11, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.